Hello, I'm Jayson Bates, owner of Electrum Financial, where a mortgage is not just a flip of the coin. And today I want to talk about the election. Who's going to be better? Oh, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I hate asking for that, but if you know any friends and family that are looking to purchase or refinance in the state of Arizona, I would love to be your lender of choice. So please reach out and tell your friends and family. So today I want to talk to you about the election. It's coming up. Big election coming up. Now, the country is very divided. We all see that on social media. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of sad, actually. But I want to get into, and I want to dive into who is best suited for housing in the presidency or as the president. Who's best? Whose policies are best? Not personalities, policies. Whose policies are best for housing? So I've done some research here, and I want to share that with you. And my last video that I did was about the AFFH and my take on the AFFH, and it's gotten a lot of feedback. So I want to kind of continue that because this is a big topic, in my opinion. There's not anybody in the United States that at some point in their lifetime that does not want to own real estate. So this affects every single person and will affect people going into the future. So I want to dive into it and share with you what I have found. So with that being said, I want to bring up a graph here. First and foremost, let me do that here real quick and pull that over here. All right, so now on this graph, you know, graphs are as good as they make them, and the details or the data that goes into them, I get that. However, this graph does show the appreciation rate of homes during a certain set period of time. And so let me zoom in on it here so we can kind of see what this is all about. So if we look at this and we say, okay, 2009, this is when President Obama was inaugurated into the presidency along with Joe Biden. So in 2009 here, let me kind of mark it here. This is when he came in. Now, if you notice, there is a bit of a flat spot here. That's because investors and people were thinking, well, what's his policy going to be? And in all fairness to him, we were in a downward spiral on housing because of the 2008 crash that happened. So it kind of leveled off right when he was the one who was said to be the next president of the United States based on the November 3rd election. So it was a little bit flat, and then he takes office. And he starts spelling out some of his policy. And we can see that it does go down quite a bit during his first, 3 years of his presidency. And then it starts to kind of creep back up, right? And so if we follow this trajectory straight across, and I don't mean to bore you with these things, and I apologize for my skills here as an artist. It's a little bit of a crooked line there, isn't it? But if we look at it straight across, 8 years of a presidency, and we didn't really see much appreciation during his presidency. So why? Why didn't we see much appreciation in his presidency? Well, I want to kind of dive into that a little bit, because during that presidency, let me just bring it up here, bring it back here to where I can talk to you here. During his presidency, there wasn't a lot of stuff put in place, in my opinion, about jobs. Jobs. As the jobs go, so does housing. That's how it works. It's really that simple. There are some things that, for individuals that cannot work for one reason or another, that housing and affordable housing is super important. But as a rule, as jobs go, so does housing. And I want to dive into that a little bit more, because I want to bring up here Joe Biden. And this really, I got to tell you, in my research, this really floored me. I got to be honest, and it probably will floor you too when you read this. Now, when I pull this up, this is Joe Biden's website. This is his website, his presidential website, for you to go out there and donate if you're wanting to vote for Joe Biden. He outlines his position on housing, and so I want to dive into that here. So let's zoom in a little bit here. I've got some things highlighted here. So it says here, as president, Joe Biden will invest $640 billion over 10 years so that every American has access to housing that is affordable, stable, safe, and healthy, accessible, energy efficient, and resilient, and located near good schools within a reasonable commute to their jobs. Biden will do this by, and then it kind of outlines this here a little bit. Ending redlining and other discriminatory, unfair practices in the housing market. Let me say, there is no redlining. We don't see it. I don't see it. I'm sure, there are very few cases of redlining that are out there. I will tell you that there were, which Facebook has done, there were opportunities for lenders, for realtors to advertise on Facebook, even Google, and only advertise to a certain zip code. And if you want to call that redlining, I guess, it is unfair a little bit as far as advertising goes, but as far as like lending and only lending in certain areas of the country or certain zip codes, I don't see that. And there's already laws on the books to combat that. So I'm not really getting his message there, but we'll continue. Providing financial assistance to help hardworking Americans buy or rent safe quality housing, including down payment assistance through a refundable and advanceable tax credit and fully funding federal rental assistance. Increasing the supply, lowering the cost, and improving the quality of housing, including through investments in resilience, energy efficiency, and accessibility of homes. Energy efficiency, we're kind of getting a theme here a little bit, I think. Pursuing a comprehensive approach to ending homelessness. I got to tell you, this last sentence here, pursuing a comprehensive approach to ending homelessness. What does that mean? What does that mean? Comprehensive approach. What? I don't know. Seems a bit little politician-y kind of stuff. But we'll continue on here. Biden principles of housing, and just some of the things that that kind of stuck out to me here a little bit. Safe and healthy, protecting families from environmental and social risk, from polluted air to lead contamination to gun violence. Yeah, gun violence. So the government's going to come in. Well, we got all these protesters hanging around Portland, Seattle, all these major cities, tearing down statues, and the government's going to protect us from that? New York City? Really? You're going to do that, huh, Biden? It's the job of the community. I don't know if that's the job of the government to protect people against gun violence, or how. I'm not even sure how that even works, to be honest with you. And by the way, when I said in the beginning, the quickest way to end housing discrepancies is to have jobs. When people have jobs and they get the income that they feel that they deserve or that they've earned, they will then move out of the distressed communities into more affluent communities, or they will reinvest in their community and make it a better community. That's how it works. So as jobs go, so does housing. That's of my opinion. But we'll continue with Joe Biden's housing proposal here. So this really starts to just really blow my mind here a little bit. Eliminate local and state housing regulations that perpetuate discrimination. Perpetuate discrimination. Exclusionary zoning has for decades been strategically used to keep people of color and low-income families out of certain communities. As president, Biden will enact legislation requiring any state receiving federal dollars through community development block grants or surface transportation block grants to develop a strategy for inclusionary zoning as proposed in the Home Act of 2019 by Majority Whip Clyburn and Senator Cory Booker. Biden will also invest $300 million in local housing policy grants to give states and localities the technical assistance and planning support they need to eliminate exclusionary zoning and policies, exclusionary zoning policies and other local regulations that contribute to sprawl. Ooh, man, there's a lot to unpack right there. I don't know, throwing money at something, again, throw money at jobs, please throw money at jobs, create jobs. We need jobs. I don't want to sound like Trump, but that's kind of what it is. The Cory Booker plan, I've seen the Cory Booker plan. It's horrible. It's not good. For some reason, some politicians want to just throw money after money after money after money, and it doesn't. It's just a dog chasing its tail. It's really what it is. Okay, so let's because it gets better. It gets better. hold financial institutions accountable for discriminatory practices in the housing market. The Obama-Biden administration held major national financial institutions accountable for discriminatory lending practices, securing hundreds of millions of dollars in settlements to help borrowers who had been harmed by their practices. And in 2013, the Obama-Biden administration codified a long-standing court-supported view that lending practices that have a discriminatory effect can be challenged even if discrimination was not explicit. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. But now the Trump administration is seeking to gut this desperate impact standard by significantly increasing the burden of proof for those claiming discrimination. In the Biden administration, this change will be reversed to ensure financial institutions are held accountable for servicing all customers. Hey, discrimination, not good. Not good at all. We do have laws in place that, if you are caught discriminating against a person, then there are some hefty fees, and you could be out of business and lose your license, and it's pretty serious. I don't know. I haven't seen the Trump administration roll back any discrimination laws. I mean, there are laws on the book. And by the way, when I read this website to me seemed like a teenager wrote it. It just doesn't seem professional at all. It seems very kindergarten kind of stuff. I don't know if you're picking up on that or not. Maybe it's just me. I don't want to be too critical of it. At least he's got a plan, because he didn't roll this plan out when when the Democrats were debating on who the nominee should be. He didn't roll out his housing plan. He rolled it out after those debates. So I don't want to be too critical of it, but it is a bit kindergartner in how it's written, because it doesn't offer any solutions. It said, this is what we're going to throw money at, right? So, but let's continue on. I know this is a long one, so stick with me. Strengthen and expand the Community Reinvestment Act to ensure that our nation's bank and non-bank financial services institutions are servicing all communities. The Community Reinvestment Act currently regulates banks, but does little to ensure fintechs. I don't disagree with him on this one. And non-bank lenders are providing responsible access to all members of the community. On top of that gap, the Trump administration is proposing to weaken the law by allowing lenders to receive passing rating, even if the lenders are excluding many neighborhoods and borrowers. Biden will expand the Community Reinvestment Act to apply to mortgage and insurance companies to add a requirement for financial services institutions to provide a statement outlining their commitment to the public interest, and importantly, to close loopholes that would allow those institutions to avoid lending and investing in all communities they serve. So this is kind of talking a little bit about redlining, right? Redlining in that sentence. And in all fairness, that shouldn't happen. That should not happen. Everybody in every community should have the same access to the same programs that anyone else has access to. And right now, they do. They do. This isn't, you're not reinventing the wheel here, Joe Biden. We've already got that. We've already got it. All right, so let's continue on here. Roll back Trump administration policies gutting fair lending and fair housing protections for homeowners. Biden will implement the Obama-Biden administration's affirmatively furthering, here we go, right? AFFH, here we go. Affirmatively furthering fair housing rule, requiring communities receiving certain federal funding to proactively examine housing patterns and identify and address policies that have discriminatory effect. The Trump administration suspended this rule in 2018. Biden will ensure effective and rigorous enforcement of the Fair Housing Act and the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act, and he will reinstate the federal risk-sharing program, which has helped secure financing for thousands of affordable rental housing units in partnership with housing finance agencies. Now, this is the segment here that I talked extensively, or not really extensively, but briefly about in my last video that's getting a lot of talk. And President Trump just the other day actually tweeted about this. He did it actually yesterday, as a matter of fact. So let me bring that up here for us, because this is pretty interesting here on this. So President Trump makes a tweet about the AFFH. I'm happy to inform all the people living in their suburban lifestyle dream that you will no longer be bothered or financially hurt by having low-income housing built in your neighborhood. And he goes on to say here, your housing prices will go up based on the market and crime will go down. I've rescinded the Obama-Biden AFFH rule. Enjoy. Typical President Trump. Enjoy, right? So with that, let me do that there. With that, he's saying, hey, AFFH is bad. And I don't disagree with him at all. In fact, I want to play a little bit of a video here about this, because this was also on the news this past weekend. So let's play this video here real quick and talk about that.
The Obama administration, riding on some language in the original Fair Housing Act that did not have all the meanings he gave to it, created a really massive rule called affirmatively furthering fair housing. Now, there was a brief mention of affirmatively furthering fair housing in the original Fair Housing Act, but all it really meant at the time was that the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development should take positive steps to make sure that people didn't discriminate in housing between people of different races or ethnicities, etc., just as we said before. But Obama took that brief mention and created out of it a transformative rule, a little bit like Obamacare, in that it's a massive rule that does a great many things, and you have to keep delving and delving. And the bottom line is that AFFH, the acronym for Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing, would radically undercut the political and economic independence of America's suburbs. It would allow bureaucrats in Washington, in the Department of Housing and Urban Development, to control zoning laws, to control the placement of transportation and business districts, even to some degree the drawing of school districts. In other words, almost every important local governmental responsibility could, under AFFH, fall into the de facto control of the feds.
So that needs to sink in a little bit, because that is huge. That's big. When the federal government can take and come into your local community and potentially rezone your school district. Now, let's just kind of dissect this a little bit. You're paying taxes. You're paying local taxes for your suburban lifestyle, or wherever it is that you want to live. You're paying taxes there because you want a certain lifestyle. That's why you moved there. And now the government can come in and say, hey, your child can't go to this school. He or she has to go to that school. And these people over here who don't pay taxes and don't contribute to your school district can now attend your school district. This is government overreach to the 10th degree. I can't, when I read this on Joe Biden's website, he puts it on his website. Are you kidding me? Are you really serious right now? You're putting this on your website saying you're going to allow this to happen and even possibly expand this to happen or expand upon it? It just seems a bit crazy to me, a bit crazy. So I want to play a little more of this video here, because this video is just, it's unreal. So let's play some more of this.
I've probably missed something, because there are so many things in the AFFH regulation. It's hard to keep track. For example, I'll give you just one example of something we both missed, quote unquote. The AFFH will allow the feds to push local governments into regional governing consortia. Now, what does that bit of gobbledygook actually mean? It means that it will try to create a layer of government in between the federal government and local government, a layer of government that corresponds to your greater metropolitan area. So if you are in, say, Montgomery County outside of Philadelphia, it will try to remove your governing responsibilities and hand them over to the greater Philadelphia metropolitan area, which will probably end up taking a chunk of your tax money. So there's a lot in AFFH.
lot to it. This is a big deal in housing. This is why I say it's so important to really look at the policies. Please look at the policies. Look at the policy, because every realtor who's watching this should, in my opinion, be against this. This AFF, they should be praising President Trump for getting rid of this thing. It's government oversight that is just not needed. And I don't know any government plan that has worked when the government's in charge of it. I mean, what government plan has worked? I don't know any government plan that's really worked like that. So I want to let's continue on with Joe Biden's website here a little bit, because there's still a lot more to unpack here in this website. So, and I highlighted this in orange here, but you know, it's just me being angry about things. But I want to look at this next sentence here, this next paragraph. Tackle racial bias that leads to homes and communities of color being assessed by appraisers below their fair value. Housing in communities primarily comprised of people of color is valued at tens of thousands of dollars below majority white communities, even when all other factors are the same, contributing to the racial wealth gap. To counteract this racial bias, Biden will establish a national standard for housing appraisals that ensure appraisers have adequate training and a full appreciation for neighborhoods and do not hold implicit biases because of lack of community understanding. An objective national standard of appraisals will also make it harder for financial institutions to put pressure on appraisers to their benefit. So he wants to regulate appraisers too. You know, some of these communities, if you're dealing in low income communities and they're parking their cars in their front yards, or they're having parties, or they don't take care of their lawns and they got weeds and they got this and that, does that affect the value? Let's just compare apples to apples here. If people within the community don't have the jobs or the income to maintain their houses, then what happens to the house value? Or they don't maintain their community because they don't reinvest in their community because they're not making enough money to do those sort of things. What happens to the value of that community? Where does it start? Jobs. It starts with jobs. The spin doctor thing that he's got going on his website is just unreal to me. Now, when you look at it on the surface, hey, it sounds pretty good. Why not? Who could argue that? Right? But if you take the time to allow opportunity for the consumer, for the American people are strong. American people know that if given the opportunity to make a living, a decent living, they will do it. That's how we are. That's how our culture is. We're not a culture of free handouts, although they're trying to make it a free handout culture. But let's go on. I don't want to get into too much political stuff here. This one really gets me. This one is unbelievable to me. Oops, sorry, I don't mean to move it back and forth. Create the Public Credit Reporting Agency. What? Credit report? Public? What is that? Being able to obtain a credit report is a critical step of home ownership, but today credit reports, which are issued by just 3 large private companies, are rife with problems. Don't necessarily disagree with that. That's actually a fair statement. I'll give them that. They often contain errors that leave many credit, quote, credit invisible, unquote, due to the sources used to generate credit score, and they contribute to racial disparities. I'm not too sure about that. When you're looking at paper that's black and white, what's on paper is on paper. I don't know. My race is not on a credit report. So I'm not quite sure how he's coming up with that. But anyway, Biden will create a new public credit reporting agency within the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, which, by the way, was found unconstitutional, to provide consumers with a government option that seeks to minimize racial disparities. For example, by ensuring the algorithms used for credit scoring don't have a discriminatory impact, and by accepting non-traditional sources of data like rental history and utility bills to establish credit. So FHA does that right now. You can do that on FHA. If you don't have a credit score on your credit report, you don't have any credit whatsoever, and you pay cash, you actually can have your utility bills and things like that put on your credit report and your rental history put on your credit report today. I don't need him or the government on a separate credit reporting agency. You can actually do that on your credit report today. So not sure about this, and I don't like the fact the government's going to try to take over credit reporting agencies. What does that mean? They're going to monitor us. Big Brother's going to watch us even more. They're going to have cameras everywhere, and they're going to put a number on our across our forehead like they do in China. And watch us on our credit score. And if they got your credit report, you don't pay your taxes, or you don't do this, you get a speeding ticket, or you do this and that and the other, your credit score affected by that? I don't like this idea at all. At all. Not good. No bueno. Don't like it. I can't even believe it's on a website. I cannot even believe it's on his website. This is why I got so angry. You can see I'm passionate about this. All right, so let's scroll down. A lot of this other stuff isn't that big of a deal, but I wanted to get in. How the heck is he going to pay for this $650 billion, $640 billion, right? So how's he going to pay for it? Invest in our housing to grow the middle class, paid for by making sure corporations pay their fair share. Corporations pay their fair share. Guess what? Raise their taxes. Raise the taxes. That's a job killer, right? Fastest way to get back to a good, strong economy, let's raise taxes. Let's raise taxes. That's a good way to do it. This is so stupid. I can't even believe this is on a website that it's his campaign website. Unbelievable. Biden's $640 billion investment in America's housing is paid for by raising taxes. He says it right here, black and white. Raising taxes on corporations and large financial institutions, specifically approximately $300 billion of the housing plan is devoted to new construction and is encompassed in the $1.3 trillion infrastructure plan. The remaining portion is paid for by instituting a financial fee in certain liabilities of firms with over $50 billion in assets. What the hell? What is that? The remaining portion is paid for by instituting a financial fee on certain liabilities. Which liabilities? Certain liabilities? Which liabilities? I don't understand. Explain to me. This is where I was saying, I think a high school kid wrote this. I'm pretty sure a high school kid wrote that. What is that? Really? That's a campaign for presidency? That's the best you can come up with? I guess bottom line here is you're going to raise taxes, and you're going to, stifle companies, of which they're the companies that then hire the employees, that give them promotions and put more money in the employees' pockets so they can go out and buy a bigger home or reinvest in their community, open up their own business, do whatever it is that they need to do as part of their lifestyle. And you're going to take that away from them by raising taxes and then handing out free money. Well, guess what happens when you raise taxes on corporations? They don't hire. They then stop spending their money, stop reinvesting in the communities. It's the biggest deal killer there ever was. And you're killing the jobs. Therefore, you're going to kill the housing. That's the high taxes. And I wanted to talk about the high tax situation there. But I also want to talk about opportunity zones, because President Trump, in all fairness, he's created these opportunity zones. Ben Carson's been in charge of these opportunity zones. And these opportunity zones are areas in which they are distressed or low to moderate income areas. And they're encouraging investors to go in there and invest and put in businesses, employ people, rehabilitate different manufacturing plants, things like that. And they get a tax break for doing that. So it's giving the corporations a tax break, which a lot of people don't like. However, when the corporations get that tax break, they then in turn employ people. And when they employ people, people make money. There's more jobs. There's more competition. They can move from one job to another. And therefore, then when they move to another job, they get a pay raise. In most cases, that's why they would move. Otherwise, they wouldn't move. And then when they get a pay raise, they reinvest in their community or they buy in another area. AFFH, no good. My opinion, get rid of it. Good job, Mr. President. And Joe Biden, if you're not going to watch this, of course, but if you have any common sense at all, Don't hand out money like it's candy. Invest in jobs. Invest in creating jobs for the American people, and the American people will take care of the rest. It's really that simple. And so with that, I'll go ahead and end this long segment of